top HFY tales, daring steampunk heroines. In a world where the skies are crisscrossed with the massive, towering airships of empires, and the streets below poles with the clatter of mechanical creatures and steam-to-powered wonders, there exist a few who stand above the rest. They are the daring heroines, the warriors of steam and steel, who defy the oppressive forces seeking to control the skies, and in doing so, carve their own path to greatness. Chapter 1: The Skyward Rebellion. Captain Alara Steele stood at the helm of the Iron Phoenix, her steam-to-powered dirigible, watching as the city of New Victoria shrank beneath her. The city's skyline was dominated by the colossal spires of the ruling empire, their gleaming surfaces reflecting the light of a dying sun. But Alara's eyes were focused on the horizon, where an imperial fleet of warships lay in wait. The Empire of Goldoria had long ruled over the skies, their massive airships patrolling the heavens, enforcing their will across the world. But Alara, with her wild auburn hair and goggles resting on her forehead, wasn't intimidated by their power. She was a leader of the rebellion, a group of fearless freedom fighters, dedicated to toppling the empire and restoring peace to the skies. Her crew, an eclectic mix of the best and brightest from all walks of life, prepared the ship for battle. Steampunk tech whirred to life, gears turning and steam hissing as cannons were loaded and propellers spun into action. "Captain, the fleet is closing in," called out Finn, her mechanic, a wiry man with a shock of silver hair and an arsenal of tools always hanging from his belt. "Then let's give them a show they'll never forget." Alara grinned, tapping the control lever. She didn't need to give any more orders. The crew, loyal to the core, sprang into action. The Iron Phoenix surged forward, its massive turbines roaring, cutting through the air with a ferocity that sent shockwaves through the clouds. Chapter 2: The Steel Sisterhood. While Alara led the charge from the front, she wasn't alone in her fight. Below in the city's heart, a group of rebels known as the Steel Sisterhood was working in the shadows. These women were engineers, saboteurs, and spies, all united in their fight for freedom. Lena was one of the most formidable among them, tall, with striking platinum blonde hair, and a scar over one eye that only added to her allure. Lena was a master at stealth and sabotage. She had been trained in the art of warfare since childhood, but it wasn't just her physical prowess that made her so dangerous, it was her brilliant mind for mechanics. Lena crouched inside the belly of an Imperial warship, her hands deftly working on the ship's control panels. She had infiltrated the vessel as a stowaway, and now it was time to strike. "Almost done," she muttered to herself, her fingers moving like a blur. She'd already disabled the ship's communication system, and now, with a flick of her wrist, she rigged the engines to explode in a matter of minutes. The ship's crew would be none the wiser until it was far too late. Chapter 3: The Heist of the Sky Vault. Meanwhile, across the skies, the rebellion had set its sights on a far more ambitious target: the Sky Vault, a floating fortress set to house the Empire's most valuable treasures and weapons. Legend said that only a select few had ever returned from the Sky Vault, their fate sealed by its impenetrable defenses. But the Steel Sisterhood had a secret weapon: Kira, an ex-Imperial officer who knew the ins and outs of the vault better than anyone alive. Kira had once served as the Empire's elite security specialist, but after witnessing the cruelty of her commanders, she had defected and joined the rebellion. Now, with her knowledge of the vault's defenses and a team of highly trained rebels, she was about to pull off the impossible. The Iron Phoenix was their transport, and they would infiltrate the Sky Vault by air, flying in under the radar of the Imperial sensors. "Once we're inside, we make no noise and take only what we need," Kira instructed her team as the ship cruised through the skies, nearing the heavily guarded fortress. "We strike fast, and we get out fast." Alara stood at the helm, her eyes sharp as she guided the ship closer. She knew that this heist was their most dangerous mission yet, but with her fearless crew by her side, she was confident they could pull it off. As the Iron Phoenix silently approached the Sky Vault, Alara whispered, "Hold steady, everyone, the revolution is about to begin." Chapter 4: The Battle for the Skies. The heist was only the beginning. As the rebellion's influence grew, so did the Empire's fury. The skies would become a battleground, filled with fierce aerial combat, daring raids, and devastating betrayals. But through it all, Alara, Lena, Kira, and the rest of the daring heroines of the rebellion would continue their fight for freedom. Each woman brought her own strength to the cause, whether it was Alara's bold leadership, Lena's unmatched skill with technology, or Kira's inside knowledge of the Empire's secrets. Together, they were unstoppable. With each victory, they shattered the Empire's grip on the skies and inspired countless others to rise up and fight. The reign of the Empire was crumbling, and the daring heroines of the rebellion were just getting started. The skies would be theirs. Epilogue: A New Dawn. As the sun rose over the horizon, casting a golden light across the sky, Captain Alara Steele stood tall on the deck of the Iron Phoenix. The once oppressive clouds had parted, revealing a bright future for the world below. The Empire was no more, the rebellion had won, and the skies were free once again. And though the road ahead would be long, Alara knew one thing for certain: with the daring heroines of the rebellion by her side, there was no challenge they couldn't overcome. The world had been changed by their courage, their ingenuity, and their unyielding spirit, and as the first new dawn broke, Alara smiled, knowing that this was only the beginning. Chapter 5: The Forge of New Alliances. With the fall of the Empire, the skies had become a realm of endless possibilities. The vast cities of New Victoria and Grand Eder lay in ruins, but from their ashes, new alliances began to form, alliances that would reshape the future of the world. Alara Steele and her crew, once known only for their fierce rebellion, were now hailed as heroes. However, they were not content to rest on their laurels. As the world around them shifted, new challenges arose that tested the strength of their unity. Alara, ever the strategist, knew that victory was not just about defeating an empire, it was about ensuring that the mistakes of the past were never repeated. "We've made a lot of enemies along the way," she said, pacing the deck of the Iron Phoenix, "and we need to make allies if we want to rebuild this world, and that's free, but stable." Lena and Kira exchanged glances. Kira, the former Imperial officers, had contacts among the merchant guilds, and Lena had contacts in the underground tech circles. Between them, they could broker deals with just about anyone. But Alara knew that even the bravest warriors could not win a battle without the right support. "We'll start with the Etherian guilds," Alara said decisively. "Their airship fleets are the only thing keeping the trade routes open. We need them if we're going to unite the fractured continents." Chapter 6: The Gathering Storm. The Iron Phoenix set sail once more, but this time, its destination was not an imperial stronghold or a hidden vault. Instead, they journeyed to the floating city of Etherium, a metropolis built upon the remains of ancient sky fortresses. It was home to the Etherian guilds, a network of powerful mercantile families who controlled trade routes and airships across the sky. As they neared Etherium, Alara and her crew received a chilly reception. The guild leaders, rich and powerful, were not quick to trust former rebels. The history between them was complex. Many of the guilds had once been the Empire's silent partners, profiting from its dominance. However, the tides had changed, the Empire had fallen, and the guild's future now rested on whether they could align themselves with the new powers that would shape the world. Alara stood at the negotiating table, her gaze unwavering as the guild leaders debated. Their city was a gleaming jewel suspended high above the clouds, filled with opulent towers and advanced technology. But beneath the surface, the guild's thirst for power was just as deep as the oceans below. "We don't need your loyalty," Alara said with a steely calm. "We need your airships. Without them, this new world will never take flight." The eldest of the guild leaders, an imposing woman with silver hair and a sharp gaze named Lady Myra, leaned forward. "You think you can simply walk in here and demand our resources? Still, you are in no position to make such offers." Alara smiled, the edges of her lips curling. "I think you'll find, Lady Myra, that we've always been in the position to change the world." Chapter 7: The Queen of the Sky. Negotiations took days, and tensions were high, but in the end, it wasn't politics or force that won the day, it was Lena's genius with technology. As part of their deal, the guilds agreed to provide the rebellion with airships and resources in exchange for a joint venture. Lena, who had spent days working in secret with Etherian engineers, had designed an invention that would change the course of warfare in the skies. It was a prototype and enhanced steam cannon that could disable even the most advanced warships. One test and the guilds had no choice but to agree. Lady Myra, seeing the weapon's potential, finally accepted Alara's proposal. What you've done here, Stale, she said, could give rise to a new power that could either unify or destroy the skies. Don't let it be the latter. Alara nodded. The skies belong to the people, Myra, and with your help, we will make sure they stay that way. With the Etherian guilds now on their side, the rebellion's reach grew even farther, but just as they celebrated their victory, news arrived of another threat, a shadowy faction known as the Sky Pirates. Chapter 8: The Sky Pirates' Reign. Unlike the guilds, the Sky Pirates had no loyalty to any one nation or cause. They were a ruthless collective of mercenaries, thieves, and rogue airship captains, operating outside the laws of the land. The pirates had long been a thorn in the side of the Empire, and now, with the Empire gone, they sought to carve out their own dominion over the skies. The pirates were led by a woman known only as Captain Vix, a cunning and elusive leader whose fleet of stealth airships had been terrorizing merchant convoys and even Imperial loyalists. Alara knew that if the rebellion was to truly thrive, they would have to confront this new threat head-on. "This is it," Alara said as she stood on the deck of the Iron Phoenix, watching the horizon. "The pirates have taken control of the trade lanes, and if we don't stop them, the entire sky will fall into chaos." Lena checked the engines, Kira sharpened her weapons, and together, they set off toward the pirates' hideout, their final challenge before true peace could be achieved. Chapter 9: The Final Battle. The confrontation with Captain Vix and the Sky Pirates was nothing short of legendary. Battles raged across the skies, as the Iron Phoenix and the pirates' stealth fleet clashed in a breathtaking aerial duel. In the end, it was Lena's quick thinking and Kira's precision that led to Vic's defeat. The pirates were disbanded, and their reign of terror came to an end. With their victory, the skies were once again free. Epilogue: The legacy of the daring heroines. With the Sky Pirates vanquished and the Etherian guilds allied with them, Alara and her crew had secured the future of the skies. The world was rebuilding, and though there were still challenges to face, the daring heroines had proven that no force was too great to overcome. The Iron Phoenix sailed on, its crew ready for whatever lay ahead, but for now, they had won their freedom and they would continue to protect the skies, one daring adventure at a time. And in the hearts of those who watched their rise, one truth rang clear: humanity, and its unyielding spirit, was the true power of the sky. Chapter 10: The Age of Restoration. After the defeat of the Sky Pirates, the skies were beginning to calm, but for Alara Steele and her crew, the battle was never truly over. The world was vast, and while they had freed the skies, there were still nations, factions, and people trying to grasp at power. The challenge now lay in rebuilding and ensuring that peace endured. Alara, now hailed as the Queen of the Skies, found herself not only as a leader of the rebellion, but as a diplomat of the New World Order. No longer did she command a ragtag group of rebels. She had become the face of a movement, one that would see all nations torn apart by the Empire's tyranny unite for a common cause. "Restoration is a delicate thing," Kira said one evening as the Iron Phoenix docked at the Etherian Citadel for a council meeting. "You can just tear down the old and expect the new to flourish. You have to nurture it." Alara had learned much from Kira's wisdom. The former Imperial officers, though once a loyal servant of the Empire, had become one of her most trusted advisors, speaking with the clarity of someone who had seen both sides of the war. And it wasn't just Kira who had changed. The crew of the Iron Phoenix had grown as well. Lena, with her insatiable curiosity and mechanical genius, was now considered the lead architect of the new airships that would reshape the future. Finn, the mechanic who had once lived in the shadows of his tools, had earned the respect of even the Etherian guilds, his innovations making even the most advanced machines run smoother and more efficiently. But it was the council that mattered most now. Chapter 11: The Council of the Sky. The world needed a system of governance. After years of war, there were no clear leaders, no unified voice. The airships, now the main method of travel and trade between continents, required a code of law. Alara knew that her work wasn't over, it had only just begun. Gathered in the great hall of the Etherian Citadel were leaders of various factions: the guilds, former Imperial loyalists, the rebellion's allies from distant lands, and emissaries from the farthest reaches of the known world. The hall was full of tension, as each group had their own agenda and their own vision of what the world should become. Alara stood at the head of the table, flanked by Kira and Lena. The murmurs of the council grew louder, as old resentments and new alliances were forged in real time. "Ladies and gentlemen," Alara began, her voice firm but calm, "we are not here to carve up the spoils of a war that has already cost many lives. We are here to rebuild, to establish a system where each of us has a voice and a stake in the future." Her words, while powerful, were met with skepticism. Many have risen to power through war and exploitation, and now that the empire had fallen, they sought to maintain their influence. "I understand your concerns," Alara continued, her tone unyielding, "but peace is not a commodity to be hoarded. It must be shared by all who wish to live in it." The room went silent, the weight of her words hung in the air. Lady Myra, the leader of the Etherian guilds, rose to speak. "What do you propose, Captain Steele?" Her voice was smooth, yet wary. "How do we balance the need for trade, innovation, and power with the desire for peace?" Alara gestured to Lena, who stepped forward with a blueprint of a new type of dirigible, one designed not just for military use but for commercial trade, travel, and resource distribution. "This is our vision," Lena said confidently, "a fleet of ships that belong to the people, a way to transport goods, ideas, and people without the need for oppression or control." It was a radical idea, ships that weren't bound to any one faction or leader, ships that would be maintained by a coalition of engineers, pilots, and merchants, each contributing to a greater good. The guilds would have their share of influence, but the rebellion would ensure that the balance of power was never tipped in favor of the few. For the first time in years, the room fell silent, not out of disagreement, but out of contemplation. Even the skeptical leaders of the guilds couldn't deny the logic behind the plan. After a tense silence, Lady Myra spoke again. Her tone softened. "We will need to see results before we commit." And so, a new plan was born, a partnership between the guilds and the rebellion, one that would give rise to a new era of exploration, trade, and unity. Chapter 12. The Skyborn Legacy. The first of the new airships, called the Skyborn, was launched months later. It was the flagship of a new world, a world where people, regardless of their origin, could travel the skies in peace. The ship was a marvel of Lena's designs, incorporating steam power, advanced propulsion systems, and automated systems that ensured no one group could dominate. Alara stood on the deck of the Skyborn, gazing out over the open skies. Her crew stood by her side, the wind whipping through their hair as they looked toward the horizon. This was their victory, not just for the rebellion, but for humanity itself. The world would no longer be divided by empire or faction. The sky was theirs to explore, to tame, and to protect. And as the sun set behind the clouds, Alara knew that they had created something that would outlast them all. The Iron Phoenix had been their weapon of liberation, but the Skyborn would be their symbol of hope. Epilogue. The dawn of a new era. Years passed, and the world changed. The coalition between the rebellion and the Etherian guilds had proven successful, and new societies were born from the ashes of war. The Skyborn fleet had expanded, its airships soaring over oceans and deserts, reaching the farthest corners of the world. Cities rebuilt, not just with stone and steel, but with a vision for a future where all people could share in the wonders of the sky. Alara Steele, once a rebel captain, now led as a protector of peace, a protector of the sky. Her legacy was more than just a story of rebellion. It was the story of a world reborn, one where every soul, no matter their background, could rise to the stars. The age of restoration had begun, and the daring heroines had carved their place in the annals of history, forever remembered as the women who changed the world. And so, the sky remained free. Despite the towering successes of the rebellion and the soaring legacy of the Skyborn fleet, Alara Steele knew that peace was not something that could be taken for granted. For every nation that had united under the banner of freedom, there were still those lurking in the shadows, factions that had bided their time, waiting for an opportunity to seize power. And not all enemies came from the sky. The world had changed, but old conflicts, old rivalries, and old ambitions never truly vanished. Beneath the gleaming cities and airships of the new age, a darkness was beginning to stir once more. Alara stood at the edge of the balcony, gazing over the sprawling city of Ethereum as night fell. The air was thick with the hum of energized glow of streetlights powered by steam and gears, the bustling sound of merchants selling goods in the marketplace, and the quiet whir of machinery from the nearby docks. But even as the world below thrived, Alara felt a growing unease. Something was wrong. "We're being watched," Kira said softly, her voice barely audible over the wind. She had approached without Alara noticing. As usual, the former Imperial officers had always had a knack for sensing danger before it revealed itself. Alara turned to her, her brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" "I'm not sure yet," Kira said, her sharp eyes scanning the rooftops in the distance. "But there's been an uptick in Imperial activity, and not just the remnants of the old regime. This feels different." Lena, who had been busy with a new project at the engineering workshop, approached the pair. Her brow was furrowed in concentration, her hands stained with oil and grease. "What do you mean different?" Lena asked, brushing a strand of her platinum hair from her face. "The new factions," Kira said, her tone grim. "There are whispers of a new organization, something that wasn't there before. It's almost as if the Empire's core is reforming in secret." Alara's grip tightened on the railing. She had fought so hard to free the world from the grip of tyranny, but now it seemed the darkness had found a way to claw its way back. And this time, it was more subtle, more hidden. If the Empire was returning, it wasn't with the grandiose displays of power that had once dominated the skies. No, this was something far more insidious. "We need to investigate," Alara said, her voice steady but filled with determination. "The sky isn't as clear as it seems." Chapter 14, The Shadow Council. The investigation began with whispers, small, subtle movements in the dark. Reports from various cities began to trickle in. Entire fleets of Imperial ships had disappeared into uncharted territories. Black market trades of forbidden tech and blueprints for old Imperial weapons were being sold in the underworld. Even more troubling, several of the guilds had begun to report incidents of sabotage and theft, most likely orchestrated by unseen hands. Alara and her crew spent weeks tracking these shadows, uncovering hints that pointed toward a single, elusive figure semi-unknown only as the Warden. Rumors surrounding the Warden were as elusive as the person themselves. Some said they were a former Imperial general in hiding. Others claimed they were the mastermind behind the Empire's destruction. The most terrifying theory, that the Warden was the one pulling the strings, rebuilding the Empire in the shadows. But the most disturbing revelation came from an unexpected source: an intercepted communication between two high-ranking members of the Etherian guilds. "We've gone too far, haven't we?" one voice said in the crackling transmission. "The Warden will not tolerate any more delays. It's time we return to the old ways. The Empire will rise again, and we will be ready." The message ended abruptly, leaving Alara with more questions than answers. Chapter 15, A Rebirth of Shadows. Alara, Lena, and Kira decided to take matters into their own hands. With the Skyborn fleet behind them, they set out to track down the secretive organization rumored to be behind the resurgence of Imperial power. Their first lead brought them to a forgotten base hidden in the mountains. Once used by the Empire for covert operations, the landscape was barren, the air thick with the remnants of long-forgotten wars. The Skyborn hovered silently above the base, its sensors scanning the area for any signs of life. "There's something here," Lena muttered, her fingers tapping furiously against the console. "Tech signatures are off the charts." The crew descended, landing in the heart of the abandoned facility. The walls were lined with old Imperial machinery, cobwebbed but still functional. As they ventured deeper into the base, the unmistakable hum of active technology filled the air. "There's something new here," Kira whispered. "They've been rebuilding, quietly, in the shadows." They reached the central chamber, a massive, dimly lit room filled with advanced machinery, blueprints, and strange energy cores pulsing with unnatural power. At the far end of the room, a figure stood tall, cloaked in shadows, their back to the crew. "I knew you would come," the figure said, their voice smooth and calculating. "You're just like your Empire, too curious for your own good." Alara's hand instinctively went to her sidearm, but Kira held her back, sensing the figure was no ordinary foe. "You know who I am," Alara said, her voice low and commanding. "Who are you?" The figure turned slowly, revealing a face that was both familiar and terrifying. The warden, Alara whispered under her breath. Chapter 16, The Return of the Empire. The warden's face was shrouded in the shadows of their hood, but the ice cold and calculating were unmistakable. You've done well to get this far, the warden said, their voice tinged with amusement, but it's too late. The Empire will rise again. You cannot stop it. You'll have to do better than that, Alara replied, stepping forward. The warden smiled, a chilling expression. The Empire was never destroyed, Captain Steele. It merely transformed. It has been reborn in the shadows, stronger than ever. The Iron Phoenix was a symbol of your rebellion, but the Empire's true power was always in its unseen hand, one that holds the strings. Alara's eyes narrowed. You think we'll stand by and let you build this new empire from the ashes of the old one?